Hey everybody, it's Adam G. Fleming here, Chaam Cowboys Publishing, with a bunch of books out there on Amazon you can find just by searching my name. Last video we talked a little bit about how Wendell Berry talks about how you can't really explain story, you just gotta tell it, you gotta tell the stories. And I want to talk a little bit more about why that is, what's going on there, why we can't just reduce stories to some kind of thing, like maybe a principle. Oh, that's what you love to do with sort of, business books. Try to get it to a principle and then keep that book as short as you can. Well, today, thinking about here, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. You may have heard of this book before. It's fairly famous. It's by Robert M. Pirsig, who is a philosopher and instructor of philosophy. And here's a little section from this book that I wanted to read. A few days later, he worked up a definition of his own and put it on the blackboard to be copied for posterity. The definition was: quality is a characteristic of thought and statement that is recognized by a non-thinking process. Because definitions are a product of rigid formal thinking, quality cannot be defined. The fact that this definition was actually a refusal to define did not draw comment. The students had no formal training that would have told them that his statement was, in a formal sense, completely irrational. If you can't define something, you have no formal rational way of knowing that it exists. Neither can you really tell anyone else what it is. There is, in fact, no formal difference between inability to define and stupidity. When I say quality cannot be defined, I'm really saying formally, I'm stupid about quality. Fortunately, the students didn't know this. If they'd come up with these objections, he wouldn't have been able to answer them at the time. But then, below the definition on the blackboard, he wrote, "But even though quality cannot be defined, you know what quality is." And the storm started all over again. Oh, no, we don't. Oh, yes, you do. Oh, no, we don't. Oh, yes, you do. Robert M. Pirsig, if you want to think about quality, maybe not exactly get a definition of it, you may want to check out Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It was interesting. Recently, we had the World Cup. We watched the World Cup. My kids and I watched a lot of soccer this summer. A lot of countries from all over, everywhere. We're there in Russia, having a great old time. And one of the things that I loved about listening to the British announcers who would define the game out for us or chat throughout the game was that they would make all these comparisons, and then at the end they would say, this team just has more quality than that team. And quality is a term that they use, maybe that we would say in the U.S. we might say skill or ability or better players, and they just use the term quality. And, apparently they know what it is when they see it. This team has more quality than that team. And oftentimes the team with more quality will win, but not always, because there are ways that you can strategize around quality. Well, that intrigued me, I got to say, because I don't know. I think quality is hard to define. I think Pirsig is right that it is something that you acknowledge or recognize in a non-thinking way. So what he did with his students here was he read them two different essays, and then he asked them, how many of you thought the first one was better? And 2 students raised their hands. How many of you thought the second one was better? And 28 of them raised their hands. And so, clearly the students were able to recognize the one that had more quality. How do you get there as a writer? Oh. How do you get there as a writer? I don't know if philosopher who wrote this Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, who spent years thinking about it, couldn't tell you. I'm not sure I can either. How to get there. Um, I think one of the ways that you might work at it would be to just ask people to give you the most honest feedback they can about what they're reading when they read your stuff. Tell me which pieces of this draft are quality and which pieces feel like they don't have much quality. Circle the parts that you think have quality. Tell me why. Don't tell me why. Just circle them. Just say, here's quality, here isn't quality, and then do it again, do it again, do it again. Developing that craft is about getting honest feedback, I think. I think that's really the only thing you can do is get the most honest feedback from, yeah, and I'm not saying ask your mom or your grandma unless they're truly able to be a critic, knowing they're not going to hurt your feelings and willing to stick it to you and say, this part isn't very good, honey. Otherwise, get rid of the honey stuff, and find somebody who will say, okay, this paragraph here has some quality to it. These 18 paragraphs don't. And then just look at them. I don't know if you can even necessarily pick apart or explain why it is that they say that, but people know when they see it. That's what Pirsig is pointing out in this book. People know when they see it. You've just got to get the honest feedback. And then you've got to try again and try again and try again. And one day you may, or you may not, I can't guarantee it. Somebody may say, hey, this was a work of quality. Well, good for you. I hope that happens for you. Thanks for checking out Chaam, Cowboys. We'll see you around.